Okay, so you know how everyone's always talking about the crazy ups and downs in the crypto markets?
Yeah, it's a wild ride for sure.
Totally. And
Oh.
stable coins, they were supposed to be like the safe haven, right?
Mhm.
To offer some stability. But um,
Right.
have you heard about algorithmic stable coins?
Oh, yeah, they're trying to do things a little differently.
Yeah.
It's a whole new approach to achieving stability, and that's what we're going to dive into today.
Yeah, we're going to like really unpack it all.
Yeah, how they work, the mechanisms, the risks, the whole nine
Yeah,
yards.
because it's pretty complex stuff when you get into it.
Yeah, and especially because they're not backed by the traditional reserves. You think of like fiat currency or other assets.
Right.
Instead, they're using algorithms and smart
So it's
contracts.
all code
Yeah,
to
essentially.
maintain their peg, usually to the US dollar, right?
Right.
So it's like instead of like a vault full of dollars, it's like lines of code holding everything together.
Yeah.
That's kind of what blew my mind when I first
Yeah.
heard about this. I was like, wait, what? That sounds a little too good to be true.
It is a pretty complex system. Imagine like if the price of the stablecoin goes above its $1 peg,
Okay.
the algorithm is designed to encourage users to sell,
Okay.
which would increase the supply and bring the price back down.
Gotcha.
And then on the flip side, if it drops below $1,
Yeah.
the algorithm is going to encourage users to buy or, lock up their coins, reduce the supply, push it back up.
So it's like this constant,
Balancing act.
yeah, like a balancing act. But how does the algorithm actually incentivize people to buy or sell?
So that's where things get really interesting. Different algorithmic stablecoins use different mechanisms.
Oh, okay.
Some common ones include things like rebasing, where the supply of coins is just automatically adjusted,
Okay.
or collateralization ratios, where users lock up other crypto assets
Okay.
as collateral to mint the stablecoin.
Okay. I think I'm starting to see how all the pieces fit together here,
Mhm.
but it still feels a little bit like a high wire act to me,
It is.
you
It
know,
really is.
because it's relying on people responding to these incentives in like a predictable way, right?
Exactly. And that's one of the big challenges
Yeah.
with algorithmic stablecoins. You're relying on market participants to act rationally
Right.
and the algorithms to function flawlessly.
Right.
And we know markets can be irrational,
Oh, yeah.
and even the most sophisticated code
Can have vulnerabilities.
can have vulnerabilities. Exactly.
So let's talk about those vulnerabilities. Like, what are some of the risks that
Okay.
come with this algorithmic approach?
Well, one of the major risks is market manipulation
Okay.
because these systems rely on algorithms and market incentives.
Yeah.
They can be vulnerable to individuals or groups, with large holdings.
Trying to game the system.
Yeah, trying to exploit the system for profit.
So it's like someone could theoretically come in and kind of like game the system.
Potentially, yeah.
Okay. That's a little concerning.
Yeah. And then there's always the risk of market volatility, which
Yes,
is
of course.
a
Yeah.
big challenge.
And that makes sense because algorithmic stablecoins are still part of the crypto ecosystem, so they're exposed to those like same crazy price swings.
Exactly.
But isn't that what they're trying to avoid in the first place?
Well, yeah, that's the irony, right?
Right.
And we've seen how this can play out in a very dramatic fashion.
Yeah.
Remember the collapse of Terra USD or UST?
Yeah, that was like a major event in the crypto
It
world.
was.
A lot of people lost a lot of money
Yeah, it really shook confidence.
in algorithmic stablecoins, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just remind us, like, what happened there?
So UST was an algorithmic stablecoin
Right.
aimed to maintain its peg to the US dollar.
Yeah.
But when the broader crypto market experienced a really sharp downturn,
Okay.
the algorithms just couldn't keep up.
So the system broke.
Essentially, the system went into a death spiral. And UST lost its peg and essentially became worthless.
So like a perfect storm of like negative events.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder, are these purely algorithmic systems inherently fragile?
Well, I think the UST collapse was a wake-up call
Yeah.
for the industry, and it highlighted the limitation
Of just relying on algorithms.
of purely algorithmic systems,
Yeah.
and it emphasized the need for better risk management.
Totally.
And it's one of the reasons why we're seeing a lot of interest in these hybrid models now,
Okay.
which try to combine the benefits of algorithms with the security of some reserves.
It's a bit of a safety net.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, after what happened with UST, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
But, okay, let's talk about those hybrid models in a little bit.
sure.
First, I want to understand the governance aspect
Yeah.
of these systems.
Yeah.
Like, who's calling the shots in this algorithmic world?
So many algorithmic stablecoins operate with decentralized governance,
Okay.
which means that token holders get to vote on changes to the protocol.
So the community has a voice.
Yeah, it's a way to give the community a voice.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But it also raises questions, about how effectively they can respond to market events or unforeseen events.
You've hit on a key point there.
Yeah.
Decentralized governance can be a double-edged sword.
How so?
So while it does promote transparency and community involvement,
Right.
it can also lead to delays in decision-making.
Because you got to get everybody on board.
Exactly. Or you have conflicting directions,
Yeah.
which could be problematic in a fast-moving market.
Right. Totally.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got potential for market manipulation, the challenge of market volatility, the complexities of decentralized governance.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other risks that we should be aware of before we jump into how to mitigate all of this?
I think one more important risk is the complexity of the underlying technology itself.
Okay.
So these algorithms and smart contracts,
Yeah.
they can be very complex.
Yeah.
And even small errors in the code can have big consequences.
So it's not just the market, it's like the tech itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it highlights how important thorough audits and security assessments are
Right.
for any algorithmic stablecoin project.
Right.
You need to know that the code is solid
Yeah.
and that the system has been rigorously tested.
Okay, but that sounds like a lot for the average person to wrap their head around, let alone evaluate for themselves.
It is.
So how can we, as investors or even just interested observers,
Yeah.
start to navigate these risks and make, informed decisions?
Well, I think for starters, don't let the idea of magic code fool you.
Right.
It's crucial to understand that these systems are still subject to real-world forces and human behavior.
So it's not like set it and forget it kind of investment.
No,
You really need to be paying attention.
You need to be engaged.
Yeah, you really need to be on top of things.
You do, and that's why diversification is so important.
Okay.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Holding a mix of traditional and algorithmic stablecoins can help to spread that risk.
So just like traditional investing.
Yeah.
Like a balanced portfolio.
Exactly.
Okay, what else can people do to, mitigate those risks?
Well, staying informed is absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Keep your finger on the pulse of the market and be prepared to adjust your position as needed.
Okay.
Because, remember, the crypto world moves fast.
It does. It's like, yeah, agility is key, but, not everybody can be glued to the market 24/7.
Right.
So what about more long-term strategies for actually evaluating these projects?
Research is your best friend.
Okay.
Before investing in any algorithmic stablecoin, take the time to really understand how it works, its track record, the team behind it,
Right.
all of those things.
Yeah, the classic due diligence.
Exactly.
But where do you even begin with research in this space? It's so complex.
Well, I would say look for projects that have transparent audits, clear documentation on their algorithms,
Okay.
and a strong community of developers.
Okay.
So you want to see evidence that the code has been thoroughly vetted
Right.
and that there's a community of experts that are actively involved.
That makes sense. Transparency is so key, especially when you're dealing with something as, potentially volatile as this.
It is.
What about red flags?
Yeah.
What are some things that people should watch out for?
Be very wary of projects that promise unrealistic returns
Okay.
or that lack transparency about their operations.
Okay.
If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right, right.
And if the team is anonymous or the documentation is really vague,
Yeah.
those are big red flags.
So common sense and healthy skepticism.
Absolutely.
Okay. Good advice. Always, always needed.
It's essential.
So anything else people should keep in mind as they're, kind of going through this research process?
Well, I think it's important to remember that this technology is constantly evolving.
Yeah.
What seems secure and stable today might be vulnerable tomorrow.
So it's important to stay up to date
Oh, yeah.
on the latest developments and be willing to adapt as needed.
So it's not a one-time research project. It's an ongoing.
It's an ongoing process.
Okay.
You have to stay informed.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about the bigger picture.
Okay.
Where do you see the future of algorithmic stablecoins heading?
Well, it's still early days, but we're at a very interesting crossroads.
Okay.
Algorithmic stablecoins have the potential to completely revolutionize how we think about stability and value
Yeah.
in the crypto world.
It feels like they could be a real game changer.
They could.
But there are also a lot of valid concerns, as we've been talking about.
Yeah.
What do you think are like the biggest hurdles that they need to overcome to achieve, mainstream adoption?
Well, I think regulatory scrutiny is likely to increase.
Okay.
Governments are paying attention
Right.
to the rise of stablecoins,
Of course, yeah.
and they want to make sure that these systems are safe, transparent, and compliant.
Yeah, that seems kind of inevitable. So how could that impact the development of algorithmic stablecoins?
Well, I think increased regulation could be a double-edged sword.
Okay. In what way?
On the one hand, it could provide much-needed clarity and consumer protection,
Okay.
which could boost confidence in the market.
Yeah, that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
having a clear regulatory framework could, help weed out some of those like less reputable projects,
Exactly.
create like a level playing field.
Exactly. But on the other hand, overly burdensome regulation could stifle innovation
Right.
and slow down adoption. So it's a very delicate balance.
So finding that like sweet spot
Sweet spot.
between, encouraging innovation and protecting investors, that's going to be key.
It is.
What other trends are you kind of seeing emerge in this space?
Well, we're already seeing the emergence of these hybrid models that we talked about earlier,
Oh, yeah.
combining algorithmic control with some degree of collateralization.
Right.
It's about finding the optimal balance
Right.
between innovation and stability.
Yeah, those hybrid models seem like a pretty promising path forward. It's like
They take
taking the best of both worlds, kind of.
Yeah,
And I imagine those would be, pretty appealing to like institutional investors as well.
absolutely.
We're looking for more regulatory clarity and more risk mitigation.
Exactly.
So we could see like more traditional players kind of entering this algorithmic stablecoin space.
It's definitely possible.
Yeah.
And that influx of institutional capital could really accelerate development and adoption.
Wow. So it's interesting to think about where all this could be headed. So, okay, we've covered a lot of ground here from, the mechanics of how these stablecoins work to the risks, the potential future.
Yeah.
What are some key takeaways for our listeners who are, trying to make sense of all this?
Mhm.
It's a lot. It really is. But I guess if I had to sum it up, it seems like the biggest takeaway is that algorithmic stablecoins, they're kind of like this fascinating experiment in decentralized finance.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. They do offer the potential for more transparent, accessible, efficient stablecoins,
Right.
but they definitely come with some inherent risks that we've got to consider carefully.
So they're not a silver bullet, but they're
Yeah.
pushing the boundaries.
They are pushing the boundaries of what's possible
Yeah, for sure.
in a world of finance.
It feels like we're still in the early innings of this,
Very much so.
like a lot can still happen.
Oh, absolutely. And that's what makes this space so exciting to watch.
Yeah.
It's this constantly evolving landscape. New innovations are emerging, new challenges all the time.
Yeah, and for our listeners who are like intrigued by all this, but maybe feeling a little overwhelmed,
Yeah.
what advice would you give them as they try to, navigate this complex world?
The best advice I can give is just stay curious and keep learning.
Okay.
Don't rely on the hype or the headlines.
Yeah.
Dive into the details, understand the technology, and, follow those conversations that are happening in the community.
So be an informed and engaged participant,
Exactly. Don't be passive about it.
not just an observer.
Exactly. Yeah, knowledge is power.
Right.
Especially in such a dynamic, rapidly changing space as this.
Totally, totally. Well said. I think that's a great note to end on. We covered a lot today, exploring, how these algorithmic stablecoins work, the risks involved, the potential they hold. It's complicated stuff, but hopefully, we shed some light on how these systems work and things to consider, before diving in.
It's been a pleasure discussing this with you. And for everyone listening, remember, this is just the beginning of the conversation. Keep learning, stay informed, and most importantly, stay curious.
That's a wrap for today's deep dive into the world of algorithmic stablecoins. We'll see you next time. Keep exploring.